this show going, man.
Hurry up, hurry up! Hurry up! Hurry up!
Hurry up!
Come on now. We're going to have action soon. Right here. It ain't going nowhere.
Boy, yeah, you got some technique, boy. You ain't show me that this summer.
Hey, wildcat.
Ball at the 5, third down and 2.
That was bad.
Let's go have some fun, bro. We ain't got to talk about too much.
He wasn't playing the ball.
It's holding.
Cliff. The Cliff. How is that not called?
That ain't going to call a damn thing.
What is the delay for? He's standing right there.
He's taking a card out. He's a piece of paper.
It's that close? Dear Lord.
Hello and welcome. We are the Aussie Guys. I'm AJ. Here with me is G.
Happy New Year. I know
Happy New Year.
We're into the 7th or something like that, but this is the first one we've done for 2019.
It
Here we
actually
are.
is.
And there's a few reasons for that, isn't there? Some people have been on, we went from one holiday
To another
holiday.
That's true.
Operation
Yes.
in between, an emergency appendectomy. Did I say that right?
You actually said that correctly.
Very well.
Well done.
So, no, how you feeling anyway?
Yeah, good.
You're all right?
Yeah.
You look okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Usually when you get crook and you have an op, you usually like drop some kegs.
Oh, I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
And you know I was on a diet
That's
before
like
that
a
happened.
woman saying that you're pregnant and she's not, but...
I was on a diet before that happened.
Yep.
Back on the bandwagon again.
You are?
Oh, yeah,
Good
my word,
stuff.
I am.
So
yeah.
no drinks of the pod? Just
No,
water?
not today.
Just water.
Yeah, just
Good
water.
boy.
But anyway, look, there's all that. We can cover off all of that stuff later because we do have a special guest on the line and we're stoked to get him on. The Pharaoh of Phantasy. It's Izzy Elkaffas. He's from the Dynasty Trade Calculator, which is a fantastic pod. And Izzy, I hope you don't mind me saying when I was talking to G. Now, the DTC pod is fantastic, and I'd recommend everybody to give it a listen. But no, just going to say but.
No, but it's good. No, it's a good but. Good but.
I'm just going to sledge on your co-host a tiny bit because it's a fantastic pod. Sometimes things get said. Sometimes things get said between us, G, but we're on the same page a lot. Mm-hmm. Sometimes things get said and you find yourself sort of saying out loud, oh, come on, what a load of rubbish or whatever. Izzy is the voice of reason.
Rating. Say shit.
Oh, okay, well, shit. Well, Izzy is the voice of reason. I think I like your style, Izzy. You're very much sort of fitting with the way we think about fantasy and building teams and players, etc. Not that your colleagues aren't, but we like the cut of your jib. Is that an Aussie saying? Cut of your jib.
I have no idea. I'm not a sailor.
Definitely not American, but I know what you mean. So it works.
But a warm welcome, Izzy. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I know it's been a long time coming. We've been trying to connect, and my schedule's been tough. And I think it was last summer we were trying to get on, and it just didn't work out. So I'm glad we're doing it now.
Cool.
That's good. And look, I said before we cut, there's a reason you haven't been on. We haven't had you back for a while. And the fact is that AJ was a bit of a, not a truther as such, but because you have to have something behind you to be a truther, but of Pharaoh Cooper. And he hasn't really panned out the way that he wanted. And AJ says, screw all Pharaohs. He goes, I don't want anything to do with the Pharaoh. I said, that's a bit harsh. So that's basically where we're at. I've actually talked him round. I said, come on, we've got to have Izzy back on.
Pharaoh Cooper.
If the Pharaoh doesn't like him himself, you're probably not going down the right path supporting Pharaoh Cooper. So I was not a Pharaoh Cooper fan despite the name. So
fair enough. And we are, look, it is the season of evaluating your dynasty teams. I mean, fantasy playoffs, wild card weekend kicking off obviously tonight, US. But this is the season of having a look at your dynasty teams with a critical eye. Maybe you're close, maybe you're not. But this is the time to buy, sell, hold. What are you going to do? Drop guys? You're looking at your draft picks. Are you going to get rid of picks? Are you going to gain picks? What are you doing? So this is the theme of this pod, essentially.
Exactly, mate. And it all comes down to now, I suppose, do you, like what I'm looking at the moment is, do I go for the unknown and watch the film, AJ do every year of all the rookies coming out and sort of back our judgment, or do you start looking to go, well, I'd rather have what I know and give away my draft picks? How do you sort of look at it? Is it a 50-50 thing with you, or is it get rid of all your draft picks, or do you like the whole rookie process of seeing a guy, spotting him and going, I'm going to back my own judgment?
It depends on where you are in the draft and who falls to you and so on and so forth. I will never trade a draft pick between now and the draft itself. The draft pick is guaranteed almost guaranteed. I don't want to say guaranteed because there are some years where the draft pick loses a little bit of value. That said, once the draft commences, people are infatuated with certain guys. And if those guys fall, whether you have like the 106 or 108 or 110, and you may not like the players in that spot, but there's a likelihood that out of the other 11 owners, if you're in a 12-team league, one of them really likes a player that's at that spot, and they're worried that somebody's going to take them. So I feel like once you get into the rookie draft itself, people get really rookie happy, and they overpay for players. And you can trade a 110, and I've done this. Every year I do this where I trade late first round picks for, a second in that current draft and a future first round pick, right? So you're swapping a first round pick next year and you're just moving down the draft a little bit. You just build equity. It's the best way to build equity in your team is during the rookie draft itself. So I will not trade a draft pick between now and before the rookie draft begins.
Okay, so what about look? In every dynasty league, there's a couple of guys at the bottom, and you look at the rosters, and the rosters aren't that great. Would you be more inclined if you were one of those guys to maybe trade them away earlier if you could get a better known commodity right now?
I would try my hardest to make the trade without giving away the first round pick. So I would try to make it a player and a second round pick. If I had to give up the first round pick and I felt like the value was just way too good, if I was just getting a really good deal, then probably yes. But I don't remember the last time I've traded a first round pick in this 3.5 month window.
I'll remember that when we start trading with you, AJ. Well, hold him back because AJ gets really toey.
Oh, I do.
So why? I guess out of curiosity, why do you move it now? Why wouldn't you wait?
It's a good question because really the value's only increasing from now till really your own rookie draft, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's no point really moving it.
I think there comes a point where people just get it. They want to be doing something and they can't wait that long. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like everybody, oh man, I can't wait, buddy. What is it? What's the off seasons is 3 NFL seasons long, correct? That's about right, isn't it? I heard someone say that the other day.
It feels like it.
Yeah.
And people just get, people get a little bit, they probably get more toey as soon as the season's over. They start looking at the team and going, oh my God, that was terrible. I've got to do something about it.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing it now, I figure you might as well do it the way that you do it, and leave it until, that 3 seasons to go until we start the whole season again.
Well, I have a perfect solution for you. So if you want to trade, this is a perfect segment that we're going to be doing or conversation we're going to be having is start selling the players that you want to bail out on and try to get those first round picks.
Yep.
And B, if you're going to, buy certain players, the players that you're buying shouldn't be peak value. You should be starting to target players that you feel are going to increase in value, this time next year. So by this time next year, the purchase that you're making now is hopefully going to be doubled, or you do have a goal in mind with the players that you're going to be buying now, saying these guys are at such a good value that I feel like I'm going to go get them now, and they're going to have a value gain in 2019, and then I can flip them. But the leverage is not in trading your first round pick. I mean, it's a losing proposition because you're, like you had mentioned, as soon as you trade that first round pick, that for the next 2-3 months, that pick is actually going to be more valuable. So you're guaranteeing a loss in equity. And I'm just not that type of owner. I just refuse to do it.
That's that Wall Street background. That's what it is. So let's talk about, the value and the equity in players. And we'll start with some quarterbacks because, look, there's been a lot of coaching changes. 1/4 of the league's disappeared as far as coaches go. There's OCs along with that. And, look, I'll just give you a list of quarterbacks, Izzy, and you just tell me which ones that you sort of how you see them going up, down, sideways, whatever direction. So, look, the guys that have gone, we've got Steve Wilkes, Marvin Lewis, Adam Gase, Vance Joseph, Todd Bowles, Dirk Cutter, Mike McCarthy.
Half the league, basically.
Yeah, Greg Williams is probably gone, even though he's interviewing for the job, but they'll probably move on from him. And along with that goes Freddie Kitchens. Steve Sarkisian's gone from the Falcons. Woohoo! Jim Bob Cooter. So, look...
hang on, G. Well, now, also, just we should just clarify.
That's just a few
with
guys.
With quarterbacks, maybe we should think about it in a superflex context, right? Because obviously these quarterbacks one quarterback league, you're thinking,
that's a fair
couldn't
call.
care less.
And look, there's a lot of leagues out there that Dynasty set up with superflex leagues.
Almost becoming the norm, really. Yeah.
Okay, so that's affected by Josh Rosen, Andy Dalton, Ryan Tannehill, Case Keenum, Sam Darnold, Jameis Winston, Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield, Matt Ryan, and Matt Stafford. So any of those that really jump out of you, that they're going to go either way?
Two. So the two in that list, I feel like that can only go up with A, supporting cast, and B, a better play callers, are Josh Rosen and Matt Stafford. If anybody knows me off Twitter or any of my home leagues, any of my leagues, I love Matt Stafford. I think he's one of the most underrated fantasy quarterbacks that we've ever had. He's a perennial QB1, low-end QB1, and if we're looking at a super flex lens, it is really difficult to attain a QB1, and he's been giving it to you. He's one of the more consistent QB1s that we've had over the last decade. He stays healthy. He produces. He has high upside. And at the end of the day, this year, they took away Golden Tate from him. Marvin Jones got hurt. The play calling was vanilla. He took a lot of sacks. It was a really difficult situation. At the end of the season, his receiving core was T.J. Jones, Andy Jones, Brandon Powell.
Who?
Exactly. Exactly. I'm missing Chris Lacey. I mean, those are 4 receivers, and I believe 3 out of the 4. I think the only one that was drafted was T.J. Jones. And then you have they're rolling out LeGarrette Blount, who's not fooling anybody to catch passes. Theo Riddick's a decent tool, but it's Theo Riddick. He's solid, but unspectacular. He's just somebody that'll help you get 5-7 yards on a play, but you can't rely on that type of player to carry an offense as being the primary weapon. So you can't really blame Matt Stafford for everything that went wrong this season for them, and it's an absolutely perfect buying opportunity. And guys, listen, Matt Stafford is still 30 years old. He's been in the league for almost my entire life, it feels like, and he's still 30. And I know now at this point he's being drafted outside of the top 20 in ADP, which is absolutely absurd. I mean, guys like Big Ben and Phillip Rivers are going ahead of him. Jameis Winston, who's barely hanging on to his job half the time, is well ahead of him. So I think he's an absolute steal outside the top 20.
So you did mention the other one was Josh Rosen, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love Josh Rosen. Yeah, and listen, did Josh Rosen look good this year? Absolutely not. He looked horrific. You saw glimpses of Josh Rosen's upside, especially early on in the season. The scariest thing this is the thing that I worry about. Young quarterbacks, if they lose their confidence, they're done. There's no coming back. So I wish they would have just let Rosen redshirt this year, because that was a dumpster fire. They're not putting him in a position to succeed. The only thing that can happen is he loses his confidence. Now we've seen, guys like Peyton Manning have an awful rookie season and turn his career around and be one of the greatest of all time. But we don't know what mental fortitude Josh Rosen has and what sort of pieces they're going to put in place next year to allow him to succeed. Pre this year, Josh Rosen to me was the best quarterback coming out of the draft. I felt like he was the most polished. He was you could put him into an NFL offense that wasn't the worst in the NFL, and he would at least hold his own. The issue is he probably went to one of the worst situations that were there, and bad offensive line, always getting sacked, always getting hurried, and it showed in his play. So, but I still think right now is a really good time to buy Josh Rosen because we don't know who the offensive coordinator is going to be. There, I have heard a lot of rumors that Adam Gase loved Josh Rosen, and he wants to potentially be the offensive coordinator for Arizona. That's kind of the dark horse Adam Gase landing spot. And that would be great for Josh Rosen, I feel.
And look, it wasn't helped by the fact that with a rookie quarterback as well, the run game is so essential to take so much pressure. And they just did not use David Johnson in the way that he should be used for starters. And you think he'd get more use because of a rookie quarterback, and it just wasn't the case. And it put so much on Rosen's shoulders straight out of the box.
Absolutely. And it seems very amateur to us to say, okay, well, how do you not? Anybody and their grandma could say, yeah, you should probably get David Johnson the ball more out of the backfield, especially with how bad the offensive line is. There's not enough time. Perfect opportunity to get your running back involved. Even Ricky Seals-Jones, who I expected to take the next step this year, wasn't really used. They used him down the field, seam buster, and it's like there's not enough time in that offense to be a seam buster. They should have been using Ricky Seals-Jones, in matchup situations, short around the line of scrimmage. Just get the ball out of Josh Rosen's hands, get some momentum going, and they just didn't do it. So I don't think it can be any worse play calling and offensive coordinator play than it was this year. So arrow's got to be pointing up because it can't be pointing down.
Okay, so the other two that were rookies, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. Do you think Baker Mayfield's probably start to price himself out of what you want to pay for him?
Hard
to get
hard to buy, I reckon now.
Yeah, it's tough, and I do worry about. I worry about the mobile quarterbacks that can extend plays because historically they've regressed in their second season. Once teams get in, I think a big one will be tomorrow. We get to see Lamar Jackson play the Chargers for the second time. It'll be the first time he's played a team for the second time. And if you look back, Deshaun Watson took a step back this year. Still a great dynasty asset, still a great quarterback, but you remember last year, he looked like he was going to be all-time Deshaun Watson. And now he just looks like a really solid quarterback, but not somebody that you're going to say, this guy is going to be an all-time great. You look at Jameis Winston after his rookie season, people thought, okay, this is going to be the next franchise quarterback. Marcus Mariota, same thing. And their stats are very similar to Baker Mayfield, same tier. They both took a giant step back, and they've never really recovered. Dak Prescott in his rookie season looked absolutely phenomenal. We felt like he was going to be the next great, and he took a big step back in his second season. RG3 had a magnificent rookie season. Now, we don't know whether it was the knee injury or not, but he took a massive step back. He couldn't even hold a job. So all these players... And Josh Allen's going to be a guy that we're going to keep an eye on for next year because he's one of those mobile quarterbacks. At the end of the day, when players of this ilk are extending plays with their legs and teams take that away from them, it's how they react. And over the last 8 to 10 years, those players have reacted poorly to that type of adjustment. So I'm a little worried that we are projecting Ryan Tannehill. You can put him in that group too, but we are projecting Baker Mayfield as a dynasty community a fantasy community a little too aggressively. People are already putting him into the top 5, projecting him into the top 5, but we need to step back and say, okay, well, yes, if the trajectory keeps going up, absolutely, I agree, but historically, it's not a guarantee. In fact, more often than not, the players have taken a step back in their second season. So I think Baker Mayfield is a better pure quarterback than all the guys that I mentioned, maybe outside of Mariota in terms of accuracy and just ball placement and so on and so forth when they had come out. But it's still something that's set in the back of my mind.
You spoke about Josh Allen. Now, this is one of those, like, we've got the long period of wait now. Now, we're all pretty much goldfish, aren't we? Like, we swim around the bowl and we remember just what happened. And if we keep swimming around the bowl, we eventually forget. You know, what's the saying about a goldfish? It goes past a rock and goes, hey, they put a rock in. Does another lap. Oh, hey, look, they put a rock in. You know, sort of like that. So is Josh Allen... I have some stake in Josh Allen. He's just someone I picked up late in Dynasty drafts last year. So I'll just stash him aside, you know. And look, his value as far as fantasy goes, like point scoring, has been phenomenal, really. And then that comes out, like you said, comes out of his legs. Is this a time to sort of maybe move on from Josh Allen? Why everything's so fresh in everybody's mind and what he's done and the scores that he's put up in the last 4 weeks or so, than to give everybody another 6 months of waiting and actually thinking about it and putting it, you know, 2 and 2 together, and Josh Allen doesn't equal 4?
Full disclosure, so Josh Allen was my 5th rated quarterback out of the top 5 this year. So for me, it was Rosen, Mayfield, Jackson, Darnold, Allen, in that order. So my bias says get out from under Allen as soon as you can. And the reason for that is the way that he's succeeding is going to be taken away next year. Like he's not going to rush for 100 yards. I think he rushed for 130, 140 yards in a game. Like that's unsustainable. Once teams start making him pass the football, he's going to struggle. He threw around 50%. And that's unsustainable for an NFL quarterback. The only quarterback that I can remember that hovered around 50% and had a successful career and still was able to make plays on the ground was Michael Vick. So if he doesn't figure out how to pass the football, it's going to be a really difficult dynasty own to have Josh Allen on your team. That being said, if he is by some miracle a player that's still going to put up, you know, let's call it, I mean, how many rushing yards did he have this year? If you guys know, maybe 600-700 rushing yards.
And they came in the space of about 4 weeks.
Yeah,
really.
Right? I mean, he only played, I think, 10 or 11 starts.
Yeah, I think about 11 starts I think he had.
Yeah.
11 starts and 600-700 yards. I mean, that's almost a 1,000-yard pace. If he does that, I mean, if he replicates that pace next year, this is a top 10 quarterback and a top 5 dynasty quarterback. If Josh Allen is a 1,000-yard rusher, a perennial 1,000-yard rusher in the ilk of Michael Vick, you're looking at a top 5 dynasty asset. There's no other way around it. It's too dynamic. I just have a feeling that we're not going to see a player that's going to be able to rush for, you know, the 50, 60 yards per game. That's probably going to come down significantly. And I think his best case scenario is he's Cam Newton, which might be a pretty decent comp, but I think that's his absolute ceiling. And I just don't feel comfortable owning him to find out.
Izzy, look, this could apply to any position, but I'm going to talk about, quarterback lens. But like with Baker Mayfield, for example, I don't know, are you the kind of fantasy player that tries to sell high and turns over your roster? Or are you a little bit more, like I tend to be a tiny bit more conservative and feel like when I've got an asset in hand, I sometimes like to see how that plays out. Like, you can't always just turn your roster over and just be
You can't get rid of all the good players just because they're good.
No, but if you do have Mayfield, for example, could you make an argument for, say, selling him high and seeing if you can get something that's a little bit more safe, I suppose, and get some maybe future assets? Who knows? Yeah,
and this is purely league dependent. Obviously, in a situation like this, if there's somebody in your league that's willing to pay top 4, top 3 premium for Baker Mayfield, yeah, I would move him in a super flex league. Could that backfire and he ends up being a top 3? Could it be Mahomes? I could see it being Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield being 1 and 2 this time next year, where they're the top 2 dynasty quarterbacks. I'm going to play the odds and say that he's not going to be a top 2 dynasty quarterback, even though it is in the range of possibilities. So I typically would, if I can find that owner that's going to give me that type of premium, yes, I will trade Baker Mayfield and maybe try to get back Jared Goff plus something, a younger quarter. And I don't even love Goff, but I feel like you could get some decent value because Goff kind of struggled at the end of the season. We'll see how he does in the playoffs. So yeah, I would move even Russell Wilson, who I don't love because they're just not passing the ball, but he's got a really safe floor there. So yeah, all the other players, there's really not a lot of quarterbacks in that tier that I feel really confident in that are young. With Wentz, I worry about the back injury. Trubisky, I don't know. Once again, with him, it's I'm curious how teams are going to adjust to him next year. Now that we've had a full year with Nagy, Lamar Jackson's still a little unknown. We don't know how he's going to act next year, and then everybody else is just a lot of question marks. So if you feel really confident in Baker, and you think that he's going to excel next year, then hold on to him. But for me, it's league dependent. If I can get a huge payoff, yes. If it's something that's just me trading just to trade, no.
Okay, well, just a couple more guys. Like Ben Rothschild, far closer to the end, obviously, than even the middle of his and you probably start talking about giving the game away anyway. So you're probably looking at moving, especially if Brown leaves. Like, mate, Juju Smith-Schuster's just an absolute gun. But if Brown leaves, the value of Ben will drop considerably. Are you looking, if you're an owner of Ben, mate, you'd be looking to get out from underneath him now, wouldn't you?
100%. Yeah. 100%. Breeze, Rivers, Big Ben and I would be trying to get Matt Stafford or Matt Ryan in return.
Yep. Matt Ryan, mate, how is he
so underrated?
He is. Like, he's number 2 quarterback this season. He's
I think
so
he's number 2 in
consistent.
2016 as well.
Yeah, he's just consistent.
Yep.
He's just, like, what more do you want? Like, if your quarterback gives you, 20 plus every week, aren't you happy knowing you're going to get that every week? Then one week you get 14 and next week you get 27 and then you're back down to 10 and then you're up to 30. Like, you don't know where you are, do you?
Yeah, with him, I think last year really, if you remember 2015.
Yes.
First
year coordinator. Yep.
Yeah, he struggled. Then 2016, he finished top 3. I want to say 2 or 3. And then 2017, he struggled again. So, and then 2018, he's rebounded. So he's yo-yoed. I mean, even dating back to, I want to say 2012, he had a big 2012, took a step back in 2013, bumped it back up in 2014. He's gone every other year in terms of his fantasy performances. So I want to say he's pushed 300 plus points in all the even years, and he's been sub 300 in the odd years. So the inconsistency on a year-to-year basis has kind of soured people. And I think people also think he's a lot older than he actually is. I mean, being 33, 34, you probably got 3 or 4 years left, especially the way the quarterbacks are playing now. And you got Julio Jones, who's probably not going anywhere for the next 3 years. So I think it's a nice way to move out from under quarterbacks that I feel are going to be retiring in a year or two, and get somebody that's probably got another 4 years. So you just reset the clock by a couple of years. I love the idea.
Okay, we'll get one more. AJ's giving me the wind-up off quarterback. Just one more, just an injured guy that probably people have forgotten. That's Jimmy G. So you've got him sitting there. You got the Shanahan offense. We've seen glimpses of the numbers he can put up. But mate, we've also seen the amount of times that he spends sitting on the sideline watching. What are you doing with Jimmy G?
He's the one that I have no idea, because there's just not enough sample.
No.
We don't have enough sample out of Jimmy G. He had a really good end of 2017, but guys, this in 2018, was he good? Yeah, he was pretty good. Was he exceptional? No. I mean, he put up decent fantasy points. He was eclipsing 200 yards, had maybe 5-6 touchdowns to start the season, and then got hurt, obviously. I just don't know if he's a perennial QB2 or a QB1. We've kind of gotten Jimmy G teased for the last couple of years. I mean, he's banging porn stars.
Yeah.
Right?
Good on him.
Yeah. So, good for him. Where's his head at? You know?
Yep.
We don't know where his head's at.
Well,
we know.
We know.
Yeah, exactly. I guess. Yeah, we actually know. Yeah, that's a good point. We do know where his head's at. Literally and figuratively.
Yes.
But for me, it's people. If you look at it this way, if an owner in your league has Jimmy G, you have to overpay to acquire him. Nobody that owns Jimmy Garoppolo feels like he's not going to be a top 12 quarterback. So you're not getting any sort of value in return. Nobody's soured on him. They feel like, okay, he got hurt, but it's still Jimmy G. He's got like this weird cult following that I don't think will go away anytime soon unless he completely craps the bed next year. So he's one of those guys that I kind of just stay away from and just let other people that own him, you know, if he ends up being a top 5 dynasty quarterback, good on them. If he ends up being, you know, Marcus Mariota 2.0, where he's just not ever like he's good, he's just not good enough.
Yep.
And that's kind of where I feel he'll end up being, where he's just solid but unspectacular and not somebody that you need to have in dynasty.
Let's move on. We've been talking about quarterbacks for a long time, although we have been talking about
very important position,
the pros and cons of just buying and selling.
Yes.
So we've been doing that as well. But let's talk about running backs, because this is very interesting.
I was looking down the running back and just going, who do we talk about? I'm just going,
there's too many.
How far can I go down until we've, you know, it's just, it's too many we're talking about.
But what we could do is talk about, maybe, Izzy, you could talk about some guys that you're buying. Do you want to start with just ones you're interested in buying and then we can turn it over to ones who are sells? You want to do that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So the buy is going to be very short list.
Yeah.
When you get into the offseason, I never want to buy any running back just because it's one of those easily replaceable positions. I get nervous. So when you have breakouts like Phillip Lindsay, Marlon Mack, Chris Carson, you know, Matt Breida's, Josh Adams, like all those guys, I start to worry about buying into that role of being a perennial RB1, RB2. So I don't buy running backs unless I feel like they're criminally forgotten. And I think the one guy that stands out to me is Ronald Jones. And it's not that I think that he's an amazing player, but what I do know is he was the youngest rookie running back coming out, and he was put in a tough situation. And I don't know if he was necessarily ready to be an NFL running back. That said, I always love targeting guys that have name value. So Ronald Jones, if he gets any sort of momentum next year, he's going to immediately have uptick in value. And that's an asset gain that you can flip for double what you paid. And I just love players like that gain equity in a snap of a finger. So he's a big buy for me just because how cheap he is and the value gain that I can get out of him. The other guy that I would be buying is Ito Smith. With Tevin Coleman leaving, I know a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to go get Tevin Coleman. Well, I'm ignoring Tevin Coleman because I really don't think he's that good. And I'm going to go after his replacement in Ito Smith, who I think is actually a better running back. And even if he splits carries with Devonta Freeman, Freeman's been hurt for the past couple of years. Concussions is a concern as well. So Ito could have standalone value next year, and he's being drafted, you know, as an RB4 in startups. So I love those two players as buys, as cheap buys.
What about someone like Darius Geis? You think that just what he did show, though, in college and what he has, his value is obviously going to be higher than Ronald Jones's is, I think. Even still, because with the one run he had, it was a great run. And people go, yeah, but look at that. We know he's done it once, at least.
Yeah. I love Geis. He's easily a buy if you can get your hands on him. Him and Kerryon Johnson, if you're talking about the younger running backs that I feel could be in the upper echelon, it's both Geis and Johnson, both young running backs who I feel could. I know people have said Geis can't be a three-down back. I actually think he's just fine in passing situations. With these guys, it's not so much about catching passes because I feel like they can. It's about how good are they in pass protection, how good are they in blitz pickup, so on and so forth. With Kerryon Johnson, silver bullet, he's going to be a guy that has three-down pedigree for the next 6 years. And I'm just saying 6 years because if you're a full-time back, usually 6 years is kind of like your max duration. But he has it all ready for him. And Geis, I don't know how he's going to be in blitz pickup and pass protection, but I feel like he's just fine catching the football. So he has three-down back potential. And I love both those guys at their current ADPs and where they can be. I think they both could be top 12 running backs. And I would boldly say that they will be top 12 running backs this time next year.
Nice.
Well, there's a few other guys in that same sort of field, isn't there? Like, we've seen glimpses of Royce Freeman this year. We got Elijah Maguire. We got Jalen Samuels, who looked absolutely fantastic when given the opportunity. Now, all these guys, you've seen a little bit, but they're still probably on the cheap. Is there any of those guys that you sort of, out of those, three that I just mentioned, that you're sort of putting in the same sort of bracket as maybe a Ronald Jones, or just not there?
Yeah, I don't hate going after Freeman, but I wasn't a big fan of Freeman coming out of college. So I especially with Philip Lindsay, it's basically with Ronald Jones, he's dealing with Peyton Barber, who I think is a decent running back, but he's not as good as Philip Lindsay is, in my opinion. So you're kind of dealing with that issue. So I think with Royce Freeman, your best case scenario is Philip Lindsay getting hurt. Your worst case scenario is Philip Lindsay being the guy and he's just picking up the scraps. And I think the real scenario is probably them doing a split backfield. And that's, unless you're the New Orleans Saints or the Atlanta Falcons, it kind of seems like a nightmare scenario. So I don't love the idea of buying Royce Freeman right now. I just don't know where that offense goes. The one that you did mention that stood out to me, who I absolutely love, is Elijah Maguire. He's one of my buys this year, but he got hurt, and that offense was kind of a dumpster fire. He did pick up some steam end of the season, but the issue is with the Jets, they're second in the NFL in cap space. They have over $100 million in cap space. They're undoubtedly going to spend that money, and they're going to find a way to plug in a running back, because I think that's just what teams do. I think they're the lead candidate to overspend on a guy like Lev Bell. I don't see the Colts doing it. I don't see the Bills doing it. I don't see the Browns doing it. I guess I could see the Raiders doing it just because it's the Raiders and they've always done weird stuff. But I think the Jets are the team that would be most likely to pay the premium for Lev Bell.
Could we see the Texans being put into that mix after what we saw today?
Yeah, maybe, but with them, I feel like, I guess they don't really have a lot of just giant voids in that offense. And I know they do have, I think they're 6th or 7th in cap space going into next year. So could they do it? Yeah, I guess I could see them overpaying for Bell. That wouldn't be a crazy situation. So I will agree with that. I'll say Texans, Jets, out of the teams that are in the top 10 for cap space, are the most likely to probably go after Lev Bell. And then Elijah Maguire would then have to dodge a bullet like a Tevin Coleman bullet, where it's just going to be mucky and you don't want to deal with it.
Okay, let me throw a few names in the ring, and we don't have to talk about them long. I mean, you can just say, Izzy, if you just want to say yuck or, I don't know, whatever. Okay. It's fine.
Yuck. There's an R rating and you give us yuck.
Yeah, well.
If you're going to say TJ Yeldon, it's a yuck.
Oh, I'm not. No, I'm going to go for some bigger names than that. What about David Johnson?
It's hard to keep it short. But I'm going to say no. I'm not good, just because of his age. I'm going to say no, even if he has a good season. He's going to be turning 28, and that's when dynasty owners start to sour on these players anyway. So best case scenario, has a good season, but he's still not going to get the value gain necessary to recoup the value, and he could actually lose more value. So I'm going to say no.
Okay. Leonard Fournette.
Another. I love Leonard coming out, but I don't like this. It sounds like work ethic is a problem.
Yeah.
And we could be looking at Eddie Lacy 2.0. with this. So I'm gonna say no. Unfortunately,
I think with a lot of these guys I'm mentioning, it's almost like if you had them, what would you do with them? Because you're not going to probably be buying these guys, really.
So if you got him, you've seen what you could get for him.
Yeah, I guess.
And look, this is another scenario, like you said, is do you wait until the draft, but then maybe try and get something better for him? Because as it's hard because everybody's going to get talked up, aren't they? All the running backs coming out. Yeah. And the problem is you're giving yourself 6 months for the guy and going to do something completely stupid, off the field. And then his stock drops even further. And look, at the moment, Jacksonville say they're not getting rid of him, but,
they are.
Yeah, they
of course, they will say that.
Because if he was going to stay, he's going to get stuck with a rookie QB, more than likely, unless they go and get, which still could come true. I made the prediction that Joe Flacco was going to go and play at the Jags before the end of the...
Might still happen.
Yeah, I'm just a bit late, but eventually it worked out. So another one I've got here, what about, we saw what Nick Chubb did this year. Nick Chubb for next year. I have a fair few shares.
Yeah, me too.
And I just want to run it with him and just see what happens.
Yeah, my Chubb is full fledged for them. So I'm in. I'm buying.
And you couldn't resist that.
No, we can't.
No,
we can't. Come on.
No, I love him.
This is a controversial guy, and I must admit, last off-season I had a Chubb for this particular player, and he's let me down. It's like a roller coaster, and I want to get off now. But the Derrick Henry roller coaster.
Yeah, I've been the front man of that roller coaster since he came out of college. I love Derrick Henry. I really do. The issue is the way that he's ended the season has catapulted his value. I was able to pick up more shares during the middle of the season. You just can't buy him now. It's just way too much inflated price tag. You look at it this way: if you didn't buy him when you had the chance, the ship has sailed, right? So that roller coaster is left. So you're not getting on.
But are you selling?
Yeah, I'm looking at. Look, I have him. I'm looking at getting off. To be honest,
he's a hold for me. The way that they took Dion Lewis's role out made me feel confident in Derrick Henry going into next year. They're both under contract. They're not strapped for cash. The Titans aren't, so they don't need to liquidate any sort of asset. They're in a weird situation where they're kind of like in the middle of the pack, where they have holes in other places that they need to fill, and running back isn't a problem anymore. So this backfield will be Dion Lewis and Derrick Henry next year, with hopefully a rebuilt offensive line, and Derrick Henry is a strong hold for me right now. I'm not selling Derrick Henry. I think we've now seen what he can do. He's a running back that needs 20 carries. You don't give Derrick Henry 10 carries and expect him to make hay with it. He's a 20 carry back that just needs one carry to pop off, and it's a volume game with him. If you give somebody more touches, they're more likely to eventually break a big one, and that's like the Chris Johnsons of the past. That's like the Jamal Charleses of the past, where it's not their averages are buoyed not by they're getting 5 yards per carry. No, they're getting 3 yards per carry, and then one of them is 70, and that's what makes them so dynamic. And that's where I feel Derrick Henry is, but in just a bigger, stockier body. So I'm holding him for sure.
Cool. And that was, we had that requested via Twitter from a listener of ours, Becca. So hopefully that gives you some info, Becca. And another couple of names via Twitter. This is from Elliot, who's in a couple of leagues with us, G, who asked about...
Mate, why would I be helping anybody that I'm playing against in the league?
Well, I could give them contrary advice.
Yes.
Trade them. Yeah. Cheap. Sell them cheap. Damian Williams... I guess you're sort of wondering that's a big unknown and what's happening in KC. And Damian Williams was never really that good before the last couple of weeks. And James Conner, what do you do with those guys?
I think Conner is a hold, is a strong hold as well.
Yeah.
I don't feel Samuels is a guy that's going to take too much workload away from him. The Steelers are not in a healthy financial situation to even address the position. So I think Conner is the guy next year. So I think that's a pretty safe assumption. so I'm good with him. Hold on to him, or he's a tentative buy as well, even though his value is pretty high.
Yeah.
The other one that you mentioned was
Damian Williams. So I guess on the back of the whole Kareem Hunt thing, and I mean, KC going to? Oh well, undoubtedly they're going to draft a running back. You'd think. Or...
Yeah, you think that they will, but once again, they have situation where their defense needs some serious help.
Yeah,
and I think maybe they feel comfortable with Ware and Damian Williams being the guys next year. Am I the type that's going to take the chance on that? No, I'm not going to. I'm more likely to just sell right now because I think Damian Williams is now crept up into late first round value, early second round value, and I'm taking the chance on selling there. If by some situation where Damian Williams is the running back next year and he's the RB1, you've made a tragic mistake by selling him for a late first, early second, because that's just you're hitting the mother load at that point. But I'll play the odds and just move them. I think right now isn't the time to do it.
Yeah, you're right. It's this goldfish thing. I mean, like, especially with the running back position, towards the end of the season, you've got third and fourth string running backs that are coming into lineups, getting 20 to 25 carries, sort of seemingly setting the fantasy world on fire, and they're just fly-by-night, aren't they, really?
Yeah. Here's the best way I can try to help people from a buy-sell for the running backs. I would look at the top 10 and top 10 and say, okay, these are the franchise running backs. Okay. Then I would look at any running back that I don't think is going to be that doesn't have draft pedigree. So first, second round running backs, if they're late day 2, day 3 type players, I'm selling those players outside of the top 10.
Yep.
If that makes sense. And then I'm trying to find day 1, day 2 running backs outside the top 24 into the top, 50, somewhere in that range, where I say, okay, these types of players could have a role because they have the draft pedigree and teams are committed to them, so on and so forth. So keep the top 10, day 1, day 2 running backs you hold on to, day 3 and later you move. If you would have moved Jordan Howard at his prime, at his peak, you would have been golden. Same thing with David Johnson. You would have been golden. A lot of these running backs. The one that's kind of, for me, like in the middle there is Aaron Jones, where I love Aaron Jones. So he's like the one running back that I would hold that's in that RB1, low end RB1, high end RB2 conversation that I wouldn't move despite his draft pedigree.
Okay. Should we go to wide receivers?
We go to wide receivers, and Jesus, we thought that the running back the names to talk about was extinguished. Like, what's that saying? Is as long as extinguished.
Distinguished.
Distinguished like my Johnson. Was that a line out of Top Gun or something? Wasn't it?
What? I don't remember that.
Yeah, it wasn't in the bar.
You sure that wasn't a porn parody?
Didn't the ice? No, it didn't. Slide? Is it Slider?
Slider?
Is it the Rio? They call it the Rio, wasn't it? The guy that sits in the back seat of the
like
Tomcat.
Goose.
Yeah. Wasn't it Slider? The static with the ice.
Oh,
the Iceman. Didn't he say something as he walked off?
I can't recall.
Well,
I have to watch it again.
You have to watch it again. Anyway, so look, wide receiver, we're getting a bit off track. Izzy's wondering what the hell's going on. But
Good.
okay, wide receivers, like, mate, the list just goes on and on. Yeah. So we'll start with the same sort of question that AJ asked you about the running backs. Is there a couple of guys that you're sort of swaying each way? Is it, guys you're sort of looking at getting rid of at the moment for a good dollar, and there are guys out there that sort of you've rummaged through the box and you've come across a gem at the bottom of it and go, how much you want for this? Because the guy didn't realise that it was worth what it is.
Yeah, so the one guy that I'm trying to acquire in every league is Tyrell Williams. He's going to be a free agent. I think he's a really good wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver 1, but I think he could be a good wide receiver 2 in the Marvin Jones role, right? Where he could be somebody's wide receiver 2 and put up 1,000 yards in an offense. So he's a target of mine. I think he's the best free agent wide receiver this year. You can make an argument that Tate, but they're different. So I love Tate as well, but Tyrell Williams is the guy that I'm targeting. And then the other one is D.D. Westbrook. In a full disclosure, not a D.D. Westbrook guy coming out. I thought he was going to be kind of what you guys say, rubbish. Is that the right concept?
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought he would be rubbish, and
Even the accent.
yeah, he finished as a top 24 receiver this year with Blake Bortles and Cody Kessler. Now here's where the angle of this comes into play. Moncrief's a free agent, and they can't afford to bring Moncrief back. They're not going to pay him. So next year it's probably going to be Marquise Lee and D.D. Westbrook as the top 2 receivers, assuming Keelan Cole does not come out of the woodwork here. And because I really like Keelan Cole, so that's sitting in the back of my mind that maybe he's like the perfect buy because you can get him for just about nothing. So those 2 guys, essentially the strategy should be, how do I acquire D.D. Westbrook and Keelan Cole? The value of those 2 guys and the amount of equity that you have to pay for them is nothing because they're so cheap. But you're going to get one of those guys that's going to be a top 30 wide receiver for the next 2-3 years. So I love that idea. Jacksonville is absolutely cash strapped. Their cap situation is awful. Trading Bortles or getting rid of Bortles will help that a little bit, but they're not going to address the wide receiver position, I don't feel like. So I think D.D. Westbrook is locked into a wide receiver 2 role in that offense, worst case, and I would hedge that by getting Keelan Cole for dirt cheap. I love that idea.
So with being cash strapped, so they get rid of Bortles, they go and get a rookie quarterback and they stick him in there. How does that help his value? Or do you see them, like I said, I thought maybe a Joe Flacco sort of floating around. Teddy Bridgewater. Do you think is that the path that you'd have to be hoping that they go down if you go and buy and stock in D.D. Westbrook or Keelan Cole?
Yeah, and I think they're going to try to acquire a quarterback. I don't think they're going to. Their defense is still good enough. So every team has a window before they have to really start paying all their players and they become completely unaffordable. And you reset the clock again. So they're still in the window despite how bad they played this year. Their defense is still in the window to be successful with a good offense, like a decent offense. So I think next year what they're going to try to do is fill the gap with another quarterback that's not as bad as Bortles or Kessler and say, okay, let's give it a real go for another season or 2 before we start having to pay all our defensive players.
And now another guy right at the top of the list, I think he was a number 2 standard, number 5 in PPR, Antonio Brown. He wants out, maybe doesn't realise that he has probably one of the best deep throw, and he's in an offense that he's fed with a quarterback that can feed him. What are you doing about Brown? Let's face it, he's not like he's 26. He's what 30?
Yeah,
30.
So he's
this year, yeah.
in the twilight. He looked like he'd lost a little bit this year, just half a step, not a whole step. What are you doing if you're an Antonio Brown? Are you holding on to him? Are you getting rid of him? See what you can get, because I'm still reckon you're going to get a fair bit.
Yeah, I've seen some of the deals that Antonio Brown has been involved in, and I pretty much like all of them. So I like the Antonio Brown side in just about all of them. So I think that he's going for a lot cheaper than he should. People feel like, okay, 31 years old, that means that a year or 2 and he's done. However, it's not the case for the elite wide receivers. If you are Hall of Fame wide receiver ability, you're playing until you're 34, 35, sometimes 36. You look at the technicians that have played in this league, I know Randy Moss isn't necessarily a technician, but Randy Moss, played, I think, into 34, 35 years old, maybe 34, but he's not a technician. So like you look at guys like T.O., also played deep into his 30s, maybe mid-30s, let's say. Larry Fitzgerald's playing into his mid-30s. Marvin Harrison played into his mid-30s. Reggie Wayne played into his mid-30s. And they put up solid statistics. Maybe they're not perennial wide receiver ones, high wide receiver ones, but you're getting good production out of those players. So I liken Antonio Brown to that. I'm not worried that he's got a year or 2 left of premium production. I still think that he's got 3 years left of premium production. and that's a pretty good price to pay considering what I've seen him go for.
Are you concerned at all that if he's out of Pittsburgh and where he may land?
Yeah, I mean that is a concern, but there's only like a handful of places that I would be absolutely terrified of him going to. So I think the odds are a team that's going to go target Antonio Brown is a team that's on the upside, not on the downside.
I agree.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
now what about the value of someone like Chris Godwin? He had a high period, then he had a low period, and at the end of the season, what did he finish off the last, week 17, 114 yards and 2 TDs, and like we said now, the fishbowl phenomenon that fantasy people are at times. How do you see a player like that?
Yeah, I like Godwin. I think he's a good player. There was a lot of hype coming in last year, and it's almost like even though he's now produced, his value hasn't really skyrocketed like you expected it to based on how excited people got. It's like the honeymoon phase with these players. They have a certain amount of time to hit big, or else people kind of like, okay, well, I'm bored, I'm off to the new thing. So Godwin is probably a decent purchase because I don't think that his purchase price is unreasonable right now. So for me, if I own him, I'm holding him. If I don't own him, I'm going to ask around to the owners that have him and see, okay, are you willing to give up Godwin for what I feel is a decent price tag? So like, a mid-first. If I can give up mid-first in this draft for a Chris Godwin, I would do it.
I'm going to throw a couple of guys in the ring that I really like. And it's interesting you mentioned Tyrell Williams because I'm on board with that. But I thought you were actually going to say Mike Williams because of Tyrell Williams going. I'm a big fan of Mike Williams. And the other guy that I really like is Nelson Aguilar, who I've been on board with for ages. And I think actually with the whole Golden Tate thing, he might actually be a sneaky, good, cheap buy.
I agree with you on Aguilar, absolutely. With Mike Williams, I think he's a hold. I don't know if he's I want to know how he performs with Hunter Henry in the offense. Tyrell Williams and Mike Williams aren't similar, but how much does Hunter Henry take away from Mike Williams in the red zone? That's what I want to know.
That's a fair point.
So I would say Mike Williams is a hold. I don't necessarily know if I want to buy him, but I'm not. I wouldn't sell him right now either. I think he's one of those players that sit in the holding period.
All right, so I'll give you a few more. I'll give you a few like younger guys. I'll give you 4 names and tell me what you think of these guys. You got my guy coming out, Dante Pettis, Antonio Callaway, Kenny Golladay, and Tyler Boyd, who had the breakout this year. And look, and a lot of people said that he wouldn't be as good with AJ Green gone, and he basically was.
Yeah, he was great. So I'll start with Tyler Boyd. I wouldn't sell Tyler Boyd. I think he's a wide receiver a solid wide receiver 2 in fantasy moving forward indefinitely. AJ Green's on the way down. I think he's trending downwards. He's going to be 31 as well. So how much does Tyler Boyd eat into the target share and so on and so forth? So I like Tyler Boyd. I'm good with that. Similar to what Robert Woods is to the Rams, I think Tyler Boyd could be to Cincinnati. So I'm good with that. Kenny Golladay, I absolutely love. Him and Matt Stafford have a connection. I like, out of the names that you mentioned, he's the one that has wide receiver 1 potential. Just being a big-bodied wide receiver 1 that's going to demand 10 to 11 targets a game. So, yes, I'm good with Kenny Golladay. I still think he's a buy. The other 2 names that you mentioned, one was
Dante Pettis.
Dante Pettis. The injury concerns, small frame. I don't mind Dante Pettis as a player. I'm just not going to – I haven't bought into the hype just yet. So, for me, if I can find a person that's excited about Dante Pettis, I would probably sell him. But I do recognize that he does have some decent potential as a player. I'm just not in love with him. And then what was the other one?
Oh, I was going to say Antonio Callaway. But look, one person I will probably skip him a little bit. What about someone like Tre'Quan Smith?
Yeah. No. I'm out on Traquan. Michael Thomas is the target hog in that offense. Drew Brees is getting older. They don't need to take a ton of shots. You're going to get too much volatile production out of Traquan Smith. He's not polished enough to be, that all route, all phases of the offense type player. And who knows who they're going to bring in the following year. And if it's Teddy Bridgewater, you don't want Traquan Smith. So it's nothing gets me excited about Traquan Smith in the New Orleans Saints offense.
Okay. Should we move it on tight end? Yeah. Tight end. The dumpster fire of fantasy.
We have a policy here. It's called the TEP policy, the TEPP, which is tight end pulse policy. So if he's got a pulse, you're probably starting him in your lineup on any given week. So, but if you're lucky to own a couple of guys we'll probably talk about,
happy days.
Very happy days. As far
I
as
tell you what,
because you basically, if you look at the tight ends and what they scored, whether it's PPR or standard, mate, if you didn't have like the top 3 or 4 blokes, mate, the drop off was ridiculous. I think it's would it be one of the worst years for tight end?
Yeah, I mean, outside of the top 3, top 4 probably. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was top 4 and then just a giant gap, and it was not a good gap.
And I don't know, Izzy, if you play in any 2 tight end leagues, but we're in some 2 tight end leagues.
Sounds like a nightmare.
And
man,
laughable.
You have no. If you got, I had Njoku and Kittle. So I was pretty good. I was pretty happy. I'm pretty stoked about more with what Baker Mayfield could become next year and with Njoku.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty wrapped about that. But man, where it was bye week, I was starting. I don't know who
You're
I
just picking up Jordan
Akins. I think, hoping he might flash the pan one week.
You're just hoping for a touchdown.
Yeah, right.
But we do have a couple of names that are possibly ones to pick up on the cheap, especially in this, really barren landscape. The one name I wrote down was Chris Herndon.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got him down here too. I was going to ask Izzy about him as well.
Yeah, he's my top tight end buy is Chris Herndon. There's obviously a connection there with Sam Darnold. He is a classic move type tight end. He's a matchup guy. Absolute buy. Considering the offense that they're in, considering his draft pedigree and the production that he put up in year 1, it's very rare to see that out of a rookie tight end. And I love it. I love and he comes from, tight end U, and I know tight end U has kind of changed to being Stanford, but I think once Coby Fleener happened, you can't be tight end U anymore. So it goes back to Miami. And I think based on what he put up this year, he's a buy. Absolutely. Still vastly underappreciated in dynasty leagues despite his age too. Usually these young guys that have little mini breakout years, people get excited about. He's still under the radar.
Another one is sort of in the same sort of vein that I liked coming out, and I was sort of happy with where he went to in Carolina, with the fact that Greg Olsen's getting older, and then he had the foot injury, and let's face it, he's probably looking to get more of a mic job, maybe hopefully replacing someone else who does Monday night.
Jason Witten, please.
Yeah. Is Ian Thomas? And he finished the season, the last 2 games with 48 yards, 1 touchdown, and 61 and 1. Ian Thomas in that offense with Greg Olsen probably more than likely probably not coming back.
Yeah. Volume might be a little dicey. Yeah, it might be a little dicey next year. But I think people are starting to overinflate his value a little bit because of his, one decent back-to-back games that he had. And I know he had a big target share game. But I think he's at this point, we need to start throwing as many darts as possible at these young tight ends.
Yeah.
Because we gotta pray one of them hits at this point. And tight ends, the young tight ends that don't have elite draft capital are always criminally cheap.
Yeah.
And if one of them breaks out, look at Kittle. I mean, Kittle was a fifth round rookie pick because he didn't have great draft capital and nobody really knew him coming out of Iowa. And if you took a stab at that type of price tag for a young tight end with an athletic profile, you hit a gold mine. So, yeah, I'm all about getting the Ian Thomases, even guys like Jonnu Smith, Chris Herndon, even Ricky Seals-Jones, who struggled. I'm good going out and getting him. Yes, on all 4 of those guys.
Now you spoke about the dartboard, like throwing a dartboard. So when you play darts, you always try and hit the bullseye. Let's face it. Okay, we all know that we've tripped 180. Sounds great, but as we always want to hit the bullseye because it's the smallest part of the dartboard, right? It's the glory. Who is your bullseye at tight end that's just someone you'd like to go out and get a hold of now before everybody else starts to hit the bullseye?
Like your Eric Ebron, perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah. For me, with tight ends, I'm just trying to hit the board. I think that's a win in itself. I don't know if there is that player that really outside. I'm trying to think of players outside of the top 10 type ADP, younger guys, that I think are going to take that next step and be Eric Ebron, Kittle. I don't know if there is that guy per se. The one guy that I think is underrated and is still young is Austin Hooper. Put up some really good statistics. I don't think he's the type of player that can end up being a top 5 tight end, but I think he's going to be in the Kyle Rudolph type zone where he's just a low end tight end 1. I think that's great value. I think one of the 4 that we mentioned, guys, is going to be that next tight end that takes that leap. So the 4 that I mentioned with Jonnu Smith, Chris Herndon, Ian Thomas, I know Ricky Seals-Jones is a really deep shot to be an elite tight end, but that could be. The one player that even though it's Lamar Jackson, he likes Mark Andrews. It's evident he likes Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is actually my tight end 1 coming out this season. But I didn't like the landing spot, and I still really don't like it with Lamar Jackson there. But he's obviously his top target. And every game, it seems like Mark Andrews is the guy that he looks for the most. And a connection, more than anything, matters for tight ends and just receivers in general. So Mark Andrews he's a screaming buy based on that situation.
That's a really good point because if you look at Mark Andrews, if you look at the way that Lamar and the whole offense worked, is that once Lamar Jackson starts moving, he doesn't look for Mark Andrews.
No.
But when he's in the pocket, and look, let's face it, next year, he like we spoke about with Josh Allen, there comes a point where you just can't, and especially from Lamar Jackson's point of view, he's a far smaller guy than Josh Allen is, and he's not going to be able to take the hits that he is at the moment. And so eventually he's going to catch up with you. We've seen it catch up with Cam Newton, and look at the size of Cam Newton. So when he sits in the pocket, like you said, if next year he's going to be doing probably more of that, Mark Andrews has been his go-to guy when he just stayed there.
Yeah.
I like
it. Absolutely. And one thing, too, Dallas Goedert, I think, is going to, out of all the players, he profiles as the most pure elite type tight end. He's got the necessary body. He's still got the necessary athleticism. Dallas Goedert has all of the tools to be a top 5 tight end. The only issue is that obviously he's in Philly with Zach Ertz. But if Golden Tate departs, which we all expect that to be the case, if anything happens to Alshon Jeffrey next year, which he's always hurt, Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz will coexist in that offense. The only downside is that people are valuing Dallas Goedert too high, considering his floor is really low by being the number 2 tight end in an offense.
The thing I find really frustrating with tight end, or one of the things, there's so many, is that the position could be such a roster sink on your bench. Like you tend to, because we've mentioned all these names, you tend to go grab guys because you're hoping for that next Travis Kelce or Zach Ertz, whoever. And so you suddenly you find yourself with 4 or 5 tight ends sitting on your bench, and you think, what on earth am I doing? Like and they're just sinks. They're just sitting there. It's so frustrating.
It is. But that's the thing. You're trying to hit the board. You just need to find somebody that pans out. Even if you go out and say, okay, I think Hunter Henry's going to be a top 5 tight end moving forward. Okay, fine. I'll pay the premium to get that player and pay a late first round pick for Hunter Henry. But I really think he's the guy. Then go do it. You know, you have to. You just need to find one so you don't have to worry about, well, I'm going to start Cameron Brate this week, or I'm going to start Vance McDonald or Gerald Everett, or God knows who else you got, and CJ Uzuma. You don't want to do that. That'll just drive you nuts. So find the next guy that you think is going to be in the top 10 and just cross your fingers.
Man, those guys you mentioned are top-tier talent compared to the scrubs that I was starting all year, I tell you.
Yeah, I know. Two tight end leagues, no thank you. What commissioner is doing that to you guys? That's awful.
I'm not complaining because I won that league this year.
You did well. I actually the minute the league ended, you won it. Well done. But the minute the league ended, I was like, rule change. I propose.
We start one. Okay, so getting off players altogether now, just as we sort of wrap this up, is it with Dynasty? How do you look at Dynasty? Do you go into every season and go, like, you want to win every season, but sometimes that's not always possible when you look at your roster. But do you try and build and get guys just to win on any given year, and then I worry about what's going to happen with my Dynasty roster the following year? Or do you go, I want to put together a team that I think can be good for the next 3 years. Let's not look too far ahead. Yeah, how do you put it together? Or, like, I've used some Dynasty teams, basically going for guys that I've watched and I've sort of laid my chips on as rookies and that, and just to see how right or wrong I can be.
Yeah, I guess the philosophy in general for me is I try to have as much balance as possible based on age. So I don't like having a super young team with a lot of volatility, and your team could have, sure, you could hit a couple gold mines, but you're probably dealing with a lot of guys that are underachieving. I like having, two or three or four veterans that are carrying my roster with a couple of these young guys that could end up taking their place. That's the type of thing that I try to do. And then I look at it and say, okay, if I'm trying to compete and trying to build for the future, how do I make sure that I'm selling guys at the right time, and so on and so forth?
Yep.
And the key for that is I use players. And I specifically mean I use running backs. So I try to find these running backs that, you could look at guys like, you could use an example like Carlos Hyde last year. You can use an example of Devonta Freeman. This year, I think it could be like a Chris Carson. You could be looking at guys like Marlon Mack, who I think Marlon Mack could have some longevity. Even guys that I can just get rid of for cheap and just get draft picks, like a Kenneth Dixon or a Gus Edwards. You use these players to pick up draft picks, no matter the draft pick. Just get Tevin Coleman is a good example. Like, I will trade Tevin Coleman once he lands on his feet, or TJ Yeldon once he lands on his feet, and try to replace these guys with players that I think are going to eventually be the next it. So I'll use them, and then once I'm done using them for the year, then I try to move them for equity and build that way, build my back end that way. So, for example, I want a championship with a team that I now have 3 first-round picks going into this year. I picked up 2 first-round picks throughout the course of this season by trading players that I had extra of during the season. So, believe it or not, I had extra tight ends. So I had Kittle, Hooper.
Wow.
It's a tight end premium league.
Yep.
So I had Kittle, Hooper, Greg Olsen, and Jimmy Graham. Greg Olsen, of course, got hurt. Jimmy Graham was never starting for me, and the team that was in first place really needed a tight end. They had literally nobody starting, so I traded Jimmy Graham for a first-round pick.
A first-round pick?
Yeah, it's a 14-team league, so he's looking at it and saying, 14-team league, and I'm right now the top team, so tight end premium. If I give up a first round pick for Jimmy Graham, that could be enough to have me win the league, and it's 114.
Sure.
And it's a super flex league.
Yep.
And I'm looking at it and saying, well, I won't be able to trade Jimmy. I'm never going to use Jimmy Graham, and I won't be able to get more than this moving forward. So I'm going to cash out on Jimmy Graham and help build my future that way. So I'm not selling young talent. I'm selling kind of the players that I've already used that I'm not going to use moving forward, that I don't think is ever. It's a stock market game to me. I'm in the financial industry for a career, so I'm always looking at buys and sells and peak and trough and the whole thing, saying where's the low point and the high point for these players, and is now the time to get out? And that's how I'm looking at it. So I'm always trying to backfill my older talent that I use sparingly. Even if it's for a second round pick, I'll just take it, because those second round picks, those can turn into the Juju Smith-Schusters, those can turn into Alvin Kamara's, whatever, the players that fall into these second rounds, and that you hit pay dirt with them.
Yeah, and not just that, those second round picks turn into, with a player, could give you a first round pick.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
that's a great way of putting it. So, okay, last question. Out of across the board, just give us a couple players each way. You're walking past a little bit of a bonfire. The guy sort of is, there's a bit of a campfire going this play. He's sort of starting to get a little bit of, bit of warmth about him. But you walk past with a fire accelerant and just lighter fluid. So who's your sort of lighter fluid guy for next year that you think's going to go from just a campfire to a full-on, forest inferno?
I guess number one target. Yeah,
a couple of guys. Yeah, a couple of guys that you're really targeting. Like you think they don't even have to be like obscure guys. Just guys could rise from number 2 to number 1, or could even go from a number 1 to just to the top of the tree.
Yeah, I never really thought about, well, who do I think is going to be the next it? The one player that stands out to me that we talked about was Darius Geis. I really think that this guy, if he can stay healthy, is going to be an absolute dynamite of a player. He's, for me, my number one target if I can somehow get my hands on him in my leagues.
Yep. And at the moment, he's sort of just like the coals at the moment. Like you're sort of poking the coals to get the fire. No, but a lot of people like we spoke about, people have short memories.
They do.
He's missed the whole season.
Sure.
There's always someone out there, isn't he, that's willing to just cut bait on someone.
Yeah, and I'm okay overpaying. See, I very rarely overpay for players. I just don't do it. Even if I absolutely love the player, I think that's the biggest tip. 2 tips that I give to people all the time. Don't overpay for a player even if you love him. It's a losing proposition long term. Actually, 3 tips. Don't overpay. 2, don't make too many trades. Too many trades is bad. You can't win them all, and you're going to get burned. And the ones that burn the most are the ones that you don't get over, and it takes a long time to recover from. And 3 is don't sell out to win the championship, if you're dealing with injuries. That's another losing proposition long term. You're trying to plug a hole that you're not guaranteeing. Like, don't mortgage for a chance to win a title. I think that's the most ridiculous thing people do, and people do it all the time.
Because you don't know what happens on any given the league. Like we said, the league that I won, the guys through the whole final. I started off as like the 6th seed or whatever it was, so the last guy in,
right?
And all the guys that I played were obviously higher than I were, and the last 2 rounds that I played, were guys that I played against. One of them twice and didn't come close to winning any of those 3 weeks, but I didn't go out and chase people. I just said, well, I can just pick the best team that I have.
Right.
And on any given week, you have no idea. It could be some guy stub his toe and he misses a touchdown, or you have a holding call. You don't know on any given week what's going to happen. So if you go on chasing someone to think that they're going to give you the league, mate, you have no idea what's going to happen that week. Right.
No, it's absolutely. Heck, in one of the leagues, I was trying to sell. It was 4 teams make the playoffs. It's a 12-team league. 4 teams make the playoff. I wasn't even playing for 2018. I was playing for 2019, and my team started really performing well. I got a lot of good, solid pickups, and I was trading. Like, I traded AP for a second-round pick. I traded Doug Martin for a third-round pick. I traded can't remember who I traded, but I picked up a first-round pick in 2019. Oh, I traded Sam Darnold in the Superflex League and say, okay, well, and I picked up Kerryon Johnson in the deal, and I got a couple first-round picks out of it early in the season. Just like constantly saying, okay, I just want to build the best team for the future that I can, and I'm going to move these assets that can help. And I end up winning the league anyway. I'm trying to sell the talent, like the win now players, and I still won. Like whether you go out and mortgage to get those players or whether you sell, like I traded Doug, I traded Adrian Peterson, but then I got lucky and I acquired Jalen Samuels. Like I had Jalen Samuels. So like it ends up working out. You're either going to win or you're not going to win, but don't mortgage your future to try to win something that is a one game situation. We're not playing a best of 5 series here. We're playing one game, and your entire team can shit the bed. Even the player that you trade for can absolutely shit the bed and get you nothing. So it just doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, I guess obviously we're going down a different path. But,
that's right. We do that a lot.
I Darius Geis, Kerryon Johnson. Those are the two guys that I would be targeting in every league. Oh, Corey Davis is another guy that, even though their offense sucks and Mariota's a piece of trash, I think Corey Davis is the next elite wide receiver.
Ooh, okay. Well, hopefully it's not with Mario, because I actually had Mario. I was asked to make a couple of big calls this year, and one of my big calls is we'll finally find out this year that Mariota is a bust. Maybe it wasn't that big a call, but I think a lot of people had him moving up this year, didn't they?
Oh yeah, and it just sounded all great. You know, you're getting new coordinator Matt LaFleur and Mariota. Matt LaFleur looks like garbage too. Like he hasn't done anything for that offense.
No,
and Mariota is just not good. You listen to the show, our show, and you know that our producer John Mosher is a huge Mariota fan. And basically outside, and I've been trying to tell him for 3 years, outside of a 6-game window that he had in his career where he looked lights out, he has been very unimpressive.
Yep.
So I just don't know what's to really like about, and I told him, this is exactly what I said, Mariota is going to be a young Alex Smith. Like to me, he's a young Alex Smith. He doesn't make mistakes. He's not gonna win you games. He's not gonna lose you games. He's not gonna turn anybody into a fantasy superstar. He's just gonna be there. You're basically everything. You're gonna have to have a phenomenal defense, a good running game, and Mariota just won't lose you the game, right? He's just gonna do enough. He's gonna Trent Dilfer it, where he's just going to be present. You just need somebody to be present and not be Blake Bortles. That's Mariota.
Yeah. Okay, so on the other side of that, we've got the fire accelerant. Who are you getting the fire extinguisher to? Like who's a big name or someone who's been firing in the fantasy circles? Do you think just next year's just not going to be it?
The biggest one.
It pains me to say this because it's controversial. If I look at the top 20,
we like controversy.
If I look at the top 20 and say, which of the top 20 guys do I think falls the most next year?
Come on, be bold. Give us the top 10.
It's top 10?
Someone in the top 10. Top
Tyreek
20.
Hill.
Oh, don't do that. You're killing me.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I got massive shares before he was Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's great. I mean, you're playing on house money. Right, so you're playing with house money at this point. You got Tyreek Hill for cheap, and even if he regresses, and I'm looking at this from regression. I don't think this is the best way I can explain it. He's a top 10 player for stone piece. He is the player that you're going to start your franchise with. To me, I do not feel comfortable with Tyreek Hill being my single best player on my fantasy team. I just don't want him to be my core.
That's fair.
So I just 135 targets isn't enough, despite how dynamic he is, for me to say that is the guy that I build my team around. Mahomes threw for Mariota. Yeah, good one. Yeah.
Don't use that Freudian slip.
Threw for 5,000 yards, had 50 touchdowns. Yeah. fantasy season of all time.
Yes.
And Tyreek Hill was the number one wide receiver. In fact, there was really no other wide receiver in that offense. So it was just funneling everything to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. A perfect situation. He still only managed 137 targets. He did have 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns, which is fantastic.
Oh, it's all right.
But I look at this and say, how much more ceiling does he have moving forward? And to me, there's not enough there to say, okay, next year, can Tyreek Hill look at like a Devonta Adams, right? He had a monster year. Look at Michael Thomas. The quarterbacks didn't have 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, but they still managed to put up double-digit touchdowns and 15, 16 consistent production on a week-to-week basis. What worries me about Tyreek Hill is that you still had a lot of games where he put up 8 points, 7 points, 9 points, 10 points. 5 of his weeks, I think, were under 11 points, despite having a 5,050 touchdown guy throwing the football. If you reduce Mahomes' production from 5,000 to call it 4,500, or even if it's 48, we got to assume the touchdowns won't be 50 again. So we got to bring that down to earth, and maybe it's closer to 40. That's a lot of production lost from a guy getting 137 targets. You know, how much of that is going to actually be catchable? How much is 63% catch rate this year? He's obviously being used down the field, explosive plays. I just don't think it's sustainable, and it's not a guy that I want to build my team around.
Well, you asked for a hot take, you got one.
Yeah, I'm not happy with it.
Sorry.
That's good. That's good. We just won't speak to you again for another couple of years. That's fine. That's all right.
Well, no, don't mind it. Look, a hot take with some rationale behind it is perfectly okay, isn't it?
It is.
No,
we usually have hot takes with absolutely no
rationale at all.
No.
Well, you owned him, right?
I have him. Yeah, I've had him since birth, pretty much.
Okay.
Oh, well, his birth, into the NFL.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just say the 4 games that he had the 169-2, he had 142-3, he had a 117-2, he had 215-2. Right, those are the 4 monster games that won you 4 weeks of the season.
Yep.
Which
I know what you're going to say now. I know what you're going to say.
A single player that can get me 4 wins a season by himself, essentially, I want that player on my team. And I'm totally good with that, right?
However.
But then when we deal with all the other weeks where he's getting you 15-0, 15-0, 16-0, 16-0, 70-0, 13-0, 46-0, 74-0, just going down the list. Like, it's just your cornerstone piece can't be doing that the rest of the weeks. It's just like when people were building around Brandon Cooks after his rookie season and he was going in the top 12. And I'm not saying that Tyreek Hill, their situations are completely different. I mean, you're getting Patrick Mahomes with no other wide receiver on the other side. You're not dealing with a Michael Thomas on the other side. But you're going to get frustrating performance when Mahomes doesn't throw for 5,050 every season. And that's just enough for me to say, I'm good with him being my second piece, but I'm not good with him being my first piece.
Oh, exactly right. And look, I have to admit that because I got him from birth, is that he's not my centerpiece. It was my third, So that's the benefit that I have. And to be honest, I have him on a fair few teams, and I didn't win any of them with him on there.
Oh yeah, he didn't have a week 15 and 16, pretty much non-existent.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, like you said, it's you want the consistent guys, don't you? Want for the most part, you want the Michael Thomases. You want those guys that they can give you that in PPR. They can give you that 30 week, but they're giving you the
high floor.
Yeah, they're giving you the high floor week in, week out. Most of the
Devontae
time.
Adams.
Devontae Adams is a perfect example.
16 points was his weekly low. That was his lowest game. Was 16 fantasy points. That's the guy. That's the receiver you want to build your team around.
Yeah,
if you're getting a guaranteed 16-point floor every week, sign me up.
Yep. On that note, Izzy, we'll wrap it up now. We've been going a very long time. I apologise, but it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I know it is late there. Give another shout out for the Dynasty Trade Calculator podcast. If you're not listening to it, you should. It is a great listen. The guys talk about all of this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
pretty much.
And look, we should get the other guys on as well. Look, when the season starts to come around and people start to really warm up to the new season, and that's when we should get Izzy back on and say, like, let's see what's happened in the off season. By then, we know the draft would have gone.
Oh yeah,
how it affects players
for sure.
That'd be great if you've got the time. Izzy, if you
Absolutely,
don't want to start up till 2:00 in the morning again.
I'd love to.
Excellent.
And, of course, give Izzy a follow at DTC_IzzyE. He's the Pharaoh of Fantasy, and as you can tell, he's...
handsome man too.
Well, yeah, and also he's...
I'm blushing.
He's not someone who just throws opinions out there without having a rationale and
unlike we do.
Thought behind them, unlike us. Yeah.
Like that. All right, Izzy, well, thanks again for coming on. We look forward to having you back when the season before it kicks off, and we'll go through what's transpired since the draft and those what all that deals with.
Everything will have changed.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. I love it.
Excellent.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Izzy.
Thanks, Izzy.
Yeah, take care.
Take care.
Thanks, bub.
See ya. Well, that was great talking to Izzy from the Dynasty Trade Calculator, as I mentioned.
Absolutely
A great
fantastic.
subscribe and listen. Definitely do that. But, yeah, he is a font of knowledge.
We gave him a little bit of what we're going to talk about, but very, very
bare
shallow.
bones. Yeah.
Very shallow. But because we know that we've listened to him, mate, we could bring up anybody and he's across the board.
He's across it, yeah. But it has been a long one, so let's wrap it up. Gee, good to be back on deck.
Good to be back. Mate, a long one for the first one back's not too bad.
That's not too bad. First one of 2019.
We're going to get a clock for the room. We're going to put little red markers on it, and we're going to have a lot of sections, and we're going to keep it to that this year.
You know, in fairness, we don't get complaints that we go too long.
No, because no one's listening.
Well,
you've got to get listeners
Touché.
to complain.
You have to have listeners to get complaints. Oh, forgot that bit.
Yeah, that's it. It's important.
Oh, man.
Don't tell us sponsors.
No. What sponsors?
Yeah.
Never mind. Okay, well, let's wrap it up, G. Great to be back, and hope you're all doing well, enjoying the wildcard round of the playoffs, and yeah, it's good.
Well done, the Cowboys and the Colts fans today.
Oh, Colts fans would be cock-a-hoop.
Yeah, they would be. Oh, so Brand. Jerry
boys.
rapped.
Oh, Jerry was,
Jerry's
he was a very happy man. Ka-ching, I think he said.
He says ka-ching every day.
Oh, but that guy, he's not... Well, Jerry Jones hasn't got that many years left. He wants to see a championship.
He does.
Another one, I should say.
Another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, one that he put together.
Yes, correct.
He'd like to think he put together.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, let's wrap it up. On behalf of G and myself, thanks for listening, everybody. Till next time, which won't be that long away. But, yeah, till next time, we'll catch you later.